Dragon Age is dark, it's bloody, it's sexy, it's the type of tale you don't really see anymore. And setting modern politics aside, I think it's this focus on these elements that make it so engaging to me. But one of the keys to my retention is strong writing, and Dragon Age Origins, for the most part, delivers on this. When we enter the game, our character finds themselves playing a critical role in the events of the Fifth Blight. We can choose from a variety of classes and races that'll give us different origin stories, but once we ventured past a specific segment, the stories converge. I chose a human noble and found my call to action a little weak, but the overall world building and dialogue is pretty good. Our companions come from a variety of backgrounds, and while they don't always agree with each other or your actions, which can have consequences, they stick with you as you attempt to achieve your goals for the greater good. BioWare games were once famous for this type of mechanic, and it feels cool and realistic to juggle your companions and navigate their differences, and it doesn't really diminish from the primary storytelling if we miss or ignore these conversations. Now, if you're looking for an action RPG, then Dragon Age Origins will disappoint you. In fact, despite playing this game to near completion many years ago, I approached the game with this mindset and I got owned, and was honestly a bit frustrated with how it handled. But once it clicked that I needed to approach the fights more strategically and slower, I really began to enjoy the combat. This is an older-fashioned RPG, which means mischances and other things, and while I still have some issues with the mouse control scheme, once I grew to actually enjoy the combat, I really began to appreciate how the game continued to push for more micromanagement of my characters and resources as I was continuously pushed to my limits. And this even got crazier, as if I let the battle into the wrong direction, it could add more combatants into the fight, meaning that if I'm already on my last legs or struggling, I really have to think my way out, and it's really refreshing and a good experience. But it isn't very beginner friendly. In fact, if you were to turn the difficulty down to easy, it basically removes most, if not all, of these strategic requirements, and probably some of its excitement, at least it would be for me. Unfortunately, visually, Dragon Age Origins hasn't aged the best. While it looks acceptable, there are definitely some times where it hasn't aged well. For example, the cutscenes are a bit noisy, and the background textures aren't the best. I also wish there were a bit more body diversity. Now, before you type that comment, you have to admit that it is a little bit weird to see every older or old woman have the same body type as a 20-year-old, and also vice versa with the men, how all the men basically look the same. You know, it's the only difference that you really see is wrinkles to determine their age. The music, on the other hand, is really good. The title screen music is iconic, and despite it ending abruptly, battle music is really epic. Voice acting is also solid, and I feel that the overall artistic direction that this game took is what's pulling a lot of this weight and making it more justifiable to play in the modern era. Unfortunately, accessibility doesn't quite hold up as well. It is a fairly standard game for this early in the 7th generation of consoles. While it does have a number of difficulties, and while there are subtitles, there is no in-game way to change either the written or spoken dialogue. Controls are remappable on keyboard, though they can't be changed on the mouse except for swapping the left and right click. There's also no controller support without mods, which does kinda suck. Dragon Age Origins doesn't do all that much better in convenience. It is available on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, as well as being available digitally on GOG, Steam, the Epic Game Store, and of course EA's launcher. There are a healthy amount of settings options, however its age is starting to show here, as I had some trouble getting it to run initially. On Steam, I experienced strange graphical bugs and consistent crashes, at least until I installed a patch. I also had a bit of trouble when I initially tried it on GOG, but all this needed is a DLL installment or a file verification. I did both, but you may only need the latter. I personally, out of the two, would recommend the GOG version, but this is just because the Steam version seems to be missing some content. But while I may have had some issues with the game, I honestly had a lot of fun with it. This game is considered a classic for a reason, and it does harken back to old school RPGs while still being accessible to newer players. I don't think that the story is particularly noteworthy, but the overall dialogue and characters are handled really well. However, I do feel that it falls a bit short of legendary status, earning it a fairly strong decent. While I personally would recommend playing it, I think that its issues barely keep it away from a must play. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Check out my last review on the MetaQuest 3 and consider subscribing. Till then, this has been Rob the Slob, and I'll see you in the virtual commute.